Yo, it's the incredible WJZ. I'm back again with another video on Final Fantasy VII. With Square Enix's live event at the Tokyo Game Show, I believe they might drop some hints on the ending for Final Fantasy VII Remake's second installment. I personally think the ending will be at the cargo ship, and I know you're looking at me crazy if I'm wrong, man. But spoiler warning for Final Fantasy VII Remake and the intermission DLC. I'll give you 7 seconds. That should be time enough for you before I start spoiling some information on the video. Alright, so let's get into this. Breaking away from the original Final Fantasy VII script, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 could end at the cargo ship, and this would mean that Part 3 could end with the events of Gaia's Cliff, and Part 4 would just end the series altogether. Here are some notes of why I think this is possible. 1. Rationality will have to be introduced to the narrative. During the Midgard arc, whenever Avalanche bombed the reactor, Shinra was on TV broadcasting his agenda, and at one point put Barret on TV. This agenda has to continue, and even more so to continue to antagonize Wutai out of the ceasefire. Cloud and the others would not be able to travel to Kalm and Junin without being wanted as criminals. 2. The game will have zones, not an overworld. This could mean that they would make highly detailed maps with the same amount of unique assets to tell the story of the area just as well as the game's narrative. Despite the remainder of the eastern continent being a 5-minute jog, the areas have rich lore in each of them to build a similar Midgard arc. 3. Minor characters that will have a major impact. Outside of the brand new characters, there could be characters slated to have large shoes to fill, such as the Mayor, Leslie, and Wedge, and literally may be great as characters, creating rich storytelling such as Roach. 4. Consider the tone of world building. The story from Corel to Midel focuses on character growth. If Jenova weren't to capitalize on the tone of fear that is present from Kalm to the cargo ship, she would have wasted an opportunity where the group would not be immune to her mental warfare. 5. Yuffie. She shows a standard for story development. An interlude DLC that is introduced in between each of the parts. If Vincent delivers a second and Zack finishes with a third, they would have capitalized on 3 of the more popular supporting characters. And those were my 5 points of why a remake might end earlier in Part 2 than we expect. Before I get more in depth with my reasoning, I want to give a shout out to my guy, DJ Track Drunk Poet, for supplying me with his work on my video. Also, I said I'd be back with more content, and even though I was held up a little bit because I had to play Final Fantasy VII, I was putting that work in. So like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Okay, so when it comes to Kalm, the area was a town that was mistakenly bombed, and the entire town was destroyed before the events of Final Fantasy VII Before Crisis. Its residents were shipped off to Nibelheim for experimentation, and the entire town was rebuilt. Now in Remake, could there be a chance that we have another deep ground facility built underneath, just like in Sector 7? This event and the game's narrative have years in between them, but it doesn't mean that the town couldn't have survivors who remember, or family of the lost people who died during that event. 2 characters who are from the town of Kalm are Elf, the former leader of Avalanche, and Veld, her father and former leader of the Turks, Sung's mentor. Veld is actually responsible for the bombing when he gave the incorrect coordinates to the strike team, and he bears the responsibility for his mistake and even lost his arm during the event. In the present day, the town of Kalm is living comfortably on Shinra's Mako energy. But many of the residents speak of how they're unsure if Shinra's the way to go. Outside of the flashback, one could think Kalm would provide nothing, since the only notable thing in the area is really Vincent's Peacemaker. But with Vincent's Peacemaker omitted, it could be Veld himself that shows his face in his own hometown and possibly with his daughter Elf. In my previous video, I spoke about how I noticed that Zeronicade could have been destroyed, and that was the explosion that Zack witnessed in the Zack flashback. This could mean that Veld and the Before Crisis Turks are living out their exile and possibly being hunted down by Jade Weapon, because the planet deployed Jade Weapon to take care of Zeronicade. But since the Turks have actually destroyed Zeronicade, Jade Weapon then prioritized on them as a threat to the planet. He could be the Turk presence that replaces the Peacemaker, since there would be no reason for you to pick up a weapon for Vincent, and we don't even know what game he's going to drop it. If the developers don't end up making Cloud and the others assist someone in town for a quest, Chocobo Bill could be here and provide them transportation to the ranch, because he would know that they wouldn't be able to cross the marshlands because of the zombies. A resident mentions that their father had to stop working in the Mithril mines because monsters had overrun it. And there is a church at Kalm that could follow the same faith as the Sector 5 church. Both have similar imagery on the top of the building. Now, this was a church that was introduced in Final Fantasy VII Durgus Cerberus, but it could now be included because they do have some type of history building the town because of that game. We could see a similar Kalm in Final Fantasy VII Remake. There is enough here in Kalm to not just let it be the place where the flashback happens. And seeing as Kalm also has televisions and working electricity, I wonder if the people will notice the characters who may be being broadcasted on television. Though it's not touched on as much in the OG, the president was just assassinated, and at least to the public, they could just think he passed on. But that's where Rufus comes in. Will he have to keep face that he is mourning the death of his father and could use Avalanche mainly as scapegoats? The recent news that will cause an uproar amongst a lot of the residents in the Eastern Continent because the Shinra presence is so strong throughout it. How will the party move through the town? Will they be welcomed by anti-Shinra citizens? Maybe this is why Barrett has the group on the Kalm in the first place, because he might have a connection that he can lay low with and, stay off the main road. We will learn how to lure chocobos and catch them, then how to ride them. They might even throw in a mini game or two at the ranch just to, help us get acclimated with riding our big yellow birds. Not every chapter needs to have a boss fight. There were chapters like Home Sweet Slum and Light the Way. Didn't need a climactic finish with a Crab Warden or Eligor. And doing chocobo tasks may be just as hard as Tifa doing pull-ups. The developers may have deliberately cut off the road from Midgard to Kalm. This would prevent rendering garbage space. I think there was a lot of garbage space when I think back to Final Fantasy 15. It looked like a big map, but there was a lot of portions of it that you couldn't walk on or couldn't get to. That's why I'm more on the line of them having zones, because if you think about how they had the sectors with so many connecting paths, the Chocobo Ranch could be a large zone that connects you to Kalm and the marshlands, and will have plenty of area to explore and gain new enemy skills, find treasure, and other side quests, because I expect Final Fantasy VII Remake to be populated, whether it's inside of a town or outside of a town. It's not really a world that's desolate or facing some type of fallout where nobody would really be outside when you think of like 15 in comparison. Going into the marshlands, which in itself is a large area of land that would comprise of its own zone and have its own purposes to hide little things and details. The Chocobo you went through all the trouble to get would be needed here. Thanks to Yuffie, she showed that the developers can form areas that go towards everyone's strengths and weaknesses, giving them all unique type of triangle commands. The marshlands would have multiple Zaloms throughout it, and like as in the OG, whenever you would kill one, it would respawn, or if you ran from it, it would respawn. There could be alpha boss created for the area, and where the lesser ones would be needed to learn the enemy skill like beta, but it would sure be like an exciting endeavor to just navigate through the marshlands trying to avoid the Zalom with your Chocobo, or you just unwittingly serve it up a nice 3-piece dinner. I don't know if my heart can handle watching a Zalom swallow a Chocobo. I don't know if I can do it. The Mithril Mine could have a larger role, because in the OG, this was where we met Elena, the rookie Turk who has a knack for letting information slip her tongue. And it was a place where Rue told the group that Reno would be back after his injuries healed with a new weapon. In Remake, we have already fought Reno and Rue at this point. And even though we saw Reno hurt during the scene where Sung receives the call to assist the VP, Reno looks healed up by the time Rufus is about to come out of the helicopter, and he's asking him, do you want to take this person? It is revealed later in the story that Rufus has ordered Sung to give up on capturing Aaron, which is why the Turks don't attack here. At the time, it seems odd that they had more pressing matters. This OG rationale can no longer apply when they can do something to deal with their opposition. They may only have a cutscene to display Elena's fighting abilities, but seeing how the Mithril mines were replaced with infrastructure, Remake's remodeling of the mines should be extensive. The run-in with the Turks could cause some kind of chasm or cave-in, and other than being given an objective that would place the group deeper in the mines, after I combed through multiple random encounters, the Madog seems like a likely monster that could be promoted into some type of boss fight. There is another monster called the Hellrider VR2 that starts spawning outside of the mines. Just by looks, a likely candidate that would be causing all the monsters in the area to cause an uproar and give Cloud and the others a reason to clear out this monster to make it safe for all the miners to come back to work. Yuffie may be encountered after the Mithril mines because this was the area she originally began to spawn. Yuffie didn't end her DLC with like a course of action or a new purpose, but it seems as though she was separated from the Sector 7 Evelyn cell, and she may attack the party out of desperation, thinking Cloud is an actual soldier. She could also recognize Barrett and Tifa as the members of the Splinter Cell. Sona was sure to remind her that they might have been the ones that they should have worked with, but she's definitely not going to just be a fight and some dialogue prompts. Interestingly, the Turks could actually be looking for the Wutai spy that infiltrated Shinra HQ and made off with their materia and classified company secrets. Meaning, one way or another, if it's not in the mines, it could be with Yuffie that we end up fighting it off against Elena earlier than we expected. And even though Scarlet used Nero from Deep Ground during intermission, the Turks would be suiting for tracking down and taking care of Yuffie discreetly. Instead of releasing more company secrets out to the world, Yuffie could also mean that Shinra soldiers would begin to populate the area in between the Mithril Mines and Fort Condor. Here's a question that I would like you guys to answer in the comments below. What if they moved Don Corneo's arc involving Yuffie to her introduction outside of the Mithril Mines and omitting it from Wutai altogether? Share your thoughts on why or why not it would work in the comments below. At Fort Condor, we will either be met with Avalanche defending the Condor Egg or just anti-Shinra freedom fighters, or maybe even both. It's an excellent location for Avalanche to set up a base of operations in plain sight, and with the minigame converted to a board game and remake, Fort Condor may take an approach where Cloud can donate funds to the Resistance so they can afford to defend themselves against Shinra. This may be capable of being done from the main menu, towns, a special NPC. This will remove the need to return to Fort Condor yourself. You may be able to also find recruitable NPCs to add to the cost of defending Fort Condor. But while they are here, this will be an area where they can finally rest, stock up, and have a new hub if, Chadley is still going to be traveling the world. He would like to see that Yuffie has joined the group, is ready to kick some Shinra butt along with Cloud. If Avalanche members or Shinra detractors are at Fort Condor, there could be a character that may be an envoy to the mayor, or you could be reunited with the Sector 7 Avalanche sub, or even our big man Wedge. Yeah, he could be here. Who knows? They would be able to explain how Rufus is heading to Junon to cross the sea after Sephiroth. The fort's defenders may actually call for the party to participate in the battle, as Shinra troops plan to form a siege and take back the fort from their control. This is why this area has the potential to have some padding. And what could the battle look like? With Fort Condor's terrain, they could sneak in a motorcycle battle, like with Roach. Yeah, all they would need to do is use the manipulate materia and the Devil Riders. And the next thing you know, Cloud's got a bike. And I'm sure he would be excited, like, I heard you left to travel the open roads, my friend. And now for Junon. This is a place that could have heavy padding. In the OG, you arrive one day before Rufus, right? And with the help of Mr. Dolphin, an infantryman who overslept, a Junon officer that is too stupid to see that Cloud has on a soldier outfit, Cloud is able to disguise himself and infiltrate right into the inauguration ceremony. It's kind of like when Heath Ledger was sitting right there in the crowd in The Dark Knight and he just takes a shot. Cloud was right there in front of Rufus's face. This is a complete lack of discipline on the Junon military's part. This area shares many similarities to the slums and is sure to invoke feelings amongst the group. The lower Junon townspeople are also not too keen on Shinra because Upper Junon pollutes their waters. If you remember the corkscrew tunnel and under the plate, Mako pollution breeds monsters. Would they have just that one guard stationed at the freight elevator, or would there be patrols actually going through the town and making sure the monsters don't get too out of hand? Also, with the Turks clearly identifying the party back at the Mithril Mines, wouldn't this allow Sung to report to Rufus and in result tighten security? The president having an inauguration, would he be safe from a group that has successfully infiltrated and escaped from Shinra HQ and is at large? I'ma add fuel to the flame. Fire. How much involvement did they have at Fort Condor? If Cloud and them are out there beating the brakes off of Shinra troops, you know that they're a stone throw away from Junin. With detailed information on their whereabouts, it would seem in Shinra's best interest to tighten security as much as possible. Instead of having the lax, we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it mentality they had in the OG, they need to stop taking the party so lightly. The party has already snuck into and blown up, Cody Fingers, 2 reactors, infiltrated a warehouse, decimated 7 advanced weapon mechs, defeated Reno and Rue, discovered and cleared out their secret underground facility, infiltrated their headquarters, wrecked the drone, beat the president-elect, and led them on a high-speed chase out of the city to not only make it 8 advanced weapon mechs that they destroyed, they got away with it. And how many infantrymen are not getting workers' comp for injuries due to gunshot wounds and buster sword slashes and kicks in the nuts? Like, they really can't. They can't take them this lightly. They can't just keep letting them walk around these, like out here, like they just run shit, even though they do. Upper Junin should just have security so tight that there can't be oxygen. But this is why Cloud should have to give his best rendition of Solid Snake as he infiltrates Upper Junin and secures as much information as possible for the group below, so they can stow away onto the ship. And once Cloud secures his infantryman outfit, you will be able to travel around the city freely and come across the other characters like the Shinra manager. In the OG, he survived the platefall, but he was starting to get fed up with Rufus and Heidegger. He could flip because he remembers what Avalanche did to protect him on the train. But could his conviction be wavering because his daughter could have been killed during Platefall? It would be an interesting twist to see if he's still spouting the mantra like he was in part 1. The mayor could return at this point of the story as well, as I'm sure the President Museum is about to get a makeover to a Rufus Museum. A way to one-up Daddy Dearest is by getting the mayor to do a reshot of who is in power. Now, if they don't fit Roach into Fort Condor, Roach could be out on the Junin streets. Who else better to take a detail that has to know every nook and cranny of the city and can literally drive his motorcycle on buildings? The individual who knows Kunsul and recognizes the Buster Sword. With Cloud isolated from the others, it would be a perfect opportunity for the 2 of them to mess with Cloud's head and bringing up, yo, where's Zack at? Now, Lower Junin doesn't have that much real estate to develop, but Upper Junin does. The beach of Lower Junin could possibly be another training spot because the water pollution, but Upper Junin has the potential to be on par or not an upgraded version of Walmart. There were areas such as the new training hall, the dive bar that Rude visits to play poker or whatever the hell he was doing down there, and in general, they never explored how many wards there actually were in Junin. These areas could be fleshed out and we could be given a new tournament spot, and this could even be a chapter that focuses on the second team's attempt to get themselves ready for the inauguration as well. The cargo ship is another area where OG rationale will cut it. I do not believe that the Whispers are gone, but that's another topic altogether. But we do know that Rufus and Cloud's party are those that can see them. Therefore, they are all individuals who can change events. Jenova is much more ruthless in this version as she kills President Shinra and they went right for Barry. A very uncharacteristic thing for bad guys to do. She wouldn't miss the chance to get all of these individuals at once while they're isolated out at sea. A more pressing question: where did Rufus go when the alarms went off? Why weren't the Turks on the ship? And why was no one able to come across all the dead bodies while Cloud and the team were fighting off Jenova? The others could have misdirected anyone that came their way, but it's harder to maintain the cover when no one has proper identification and they have already been alerted of intruders. Who sounded those alarms in the first place? These questions could make the cargo ship surely a full-fledged dungeon itself. And seeing as it's Jenova, without raising the ESRB, she could mask the entire ship in her illusion. She was capable of this in the OG when she tricked Red 13, who was holding the black materia, by causing an area of effect. She is capable of bringing Cloud and those who accompany him into the Nibelheim flashback to tell him he is nothing more than a clone. Jenova has the ability to infect people with a virus that will turn you into monsters, which would cause all those dead bodies to turn into something grotesque and even bring back those she's already killed. As the game restricts you from using the cargo ship to return to the eastern continent because Heidegger shuts it down in the OG, the remake could simply destroy the ship altogether, which would be a little bit more rational. Whether this means damaging the ship so badly that it needs extensive repairs, crashing it into the docks because there was no one left to pilot it, or just having it sink into the sea because of all the fighting. As I stated before, Shinra cannot take the party lightly anymore, and Rufus learned Cloud and the others were on the ship by the time he exits the ship in OG. Did he have the knowledge when he was on board? Would he just sit by and watch his subordinates fail him when he could have finished them off himself? Couldn't Jenova use the image of the viral corpse of President Shinra against Rufus and Heidegger? Because even though there's bad blood between Rufus and his father, he can still have some type of emotional response. And there are other methods Jenova can use to get an emotional response from them both. When Jenova killed Barrett and the Whispers saved him, did they remove her viral infection from his body? Could she have also taken his memories when she killed him? Using the images of Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge against him in a moment where his emotions welled up so much because he was so close but unable to act against Rufus. There is even reason to use this moment for foreshadowing Golden Saucer and all the people Barrett lost in Corel. Yuffie will already be seasick. The sight of seeing Sona may break her. Red 13 could be suffering from his testings of Hojo, his number being similar to the Black Cloaks, and his memories of home. In the light novel A Tale of Two Paths, there is a moment when Cloud joins Aerith and Tifa. These three could be together in a scenario that would cause everyone but Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith to be going through manic episodes because of the images they are seeing, will also cause the right amount of tension for the group to finish off Jenova as quickly as possible. The final area would be Costa del Sol. It could be a post-game area capable of housing any of the vices you could find throughout the game. Where Part 1 took the approach of using a final save point, Part 2 could utilize Costa del Sol as a workaround to that. You will eventually use the chapter selection to go back and complete quests and platinum the game. But once it's over, it's nice to have an area where you can switch to whoever you want and enjoy the area as is until the next game rolls around. The characters all find their own things to do while visiting the area, and it's an excellent R&R moment after the terror Jenova went brought. Carrying over Gil from the previous game, we should even have enough money to purchase the Cloud Villa if you haven't invested it all into Wakanda, as not all chapters need to have a boss fight. Meeting up with Johnny again should be terrifying enough. Also, another Turk from before Crisis once frequented the area and became very popular amongst the locals. The legend Turk, who is also from Junin, may be living out his exile on the beaches of Costa del Sol. Because he is such a legendary fighter, he could be bold enough to light a cigar and simply say, "Come and get me," dare you. Costa del Sol will be reminiscent to Home Sweet Slums, where after you finish all the side quests, you would finish with an event, which could bring Cloud to come across Hojo. No longer with the Shimmer Company, he could become even more unhinged. If there was anyone that could stick a fork into a story with their foreboding messages, it's him. He would be off with a nice laugh and his excitement for the reunion theory to be proven correct. Cloud would know his journey would continue west, but now he can give everyone a moment of respite.